Oh, good.
It
It
worked.
worked.
Yay. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hi,
I
I'm fine.
thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to get to chat with you.
Oh, yes, I'm excited to do this. It's one of my favorite
Oh,
topics.
good. Me too. Me too.
So,
I could just go on and on about a single symbol for hours. We won't do
yeah,
hours, but I could definitely, we could dive into a single symbol all day. I love
oh,
it.
yeah.
I want to start by saying again, thank you for joining me, and just in general, thank you for the way you always so graciously share your knowledge and wisdom with the bigger tarot community. Because I know we all learn so much from you when you share. I always see
Mm,
you sharing things in the Facebook groups and stuff, and I'm always like, oh, what does Mary say about it? Because I know that you always have something new that most people don't
mm,
know about some wrinkle in a card. So thank
yeah.
you so much.
Well, it's been a lot of fun going through all the possibilities, and I've got pages and pages worth. Every once in a while, I have to look down at my list. I've got a mind map of
Right.
possibilities, but I also have pages of text all about the bag. I
Oh,
call
my
it the
gosh, I
bag.
love that you have pages just about the bag. That makes me
Yes.
so happy. So, for anybody just joining us, Mary and I are going to talk specifically about the bag or satchel that the Fool has traditionally in the Fool card. That little
Oh,
backpack kind of satchel, little bag that he has on the end of his staff,
yeah.
which I think is going to be fascinating simply because we've got so much to even dive into simply by what might be in the bag. That's a whole topic we can dive into, as well
Yeah.
as that little icon that's on the bag. That's almost a secondary
Mm,
symbol to it as well. The potential. I think it's
yeah.
an eagle, but I want to hear from you too because maybe it's not an eagle. I want to hear. So, let's just start from the beginning. What are you, as far as some base impressions of that bag, as far as what it means to you symbolically? What are your impressions?
Oh, well, to me, the bag has always been something that's full of possibilities and potentials. And so, whatever it is we want to make of that, but on the other hand, and let me just hold this up for a moment here, is that although there's all kinds of possibilities of the bag, just like the Fool represents all kinds of possibilities and potentials, the Fool seems to be completely oblivious to it.
Right,
And
right.
so that adds immediately another level that goes along with the Fool, no thing, nothing, that is an aspect of it. So we get to unpack it,
Yes,
unpack the
yes.
baggage.
Literally, yes. I love
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
the possibilities, the potential. I love that you're pointing out that he's not really even aware of it almost, or not really giving attention to it.
yeah.
Because I sometimes wonder if there's things like lessons yet to be learned, maybe that were in his kind of life plan that he's maybe karmically still continuing to try to learn in each life and has not learned yet. And he's still got those packed away because he has not yet learned the lessons he is supposed to on his journey. Um,
Well,
or
that's one
other
thing.
things he's not aware of.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'd like to get into a little bit later is unpacking this because it's through the major arcana that he discovers all the things in the bag. It's a Mary Poppins style bag. If you remember in the Mary Poppins story, where she opens her satchel, her baggage, and starts pulling out all kinds and manners of different things. And the kids are
Yes.
sitting around going, what? This one small bag. So it's the
Yes.
rest of the major arcana that we can look at and see what could potentially go into and out of the bag.
Yes, I love that. I actually that's I love the way you're thinking. I actually sat down because I love symbols and sat down and made a
Yeah.
list of what I think might each archetype might have given or gifted to the Fool along his journey,
Ah,
that he might now carry in his bag, like one item or tool or something that one little thing in their kit that they may have handed off to him each cycle around. So I can't wait to dig into that. That makes me super
yeah.
excited.
And it's kind of the opposite, the perspective I've come from. So bringing those two together, because I see like Mary Poppins with each card pull something out that is core to that card. Um,
Yes.
so and he doesn't even know what he's going to pull out because of course he's the Fool.
Right, right. Just
But it
reaching in,
makes,
seeing what comes
yeah,
out, probably something
yeah,
10 times bigger than the bag.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
What I've read a little bit, and obviously we'll kind of bounce around a lot as far as I think there's so many layers here.
yeah.
I'm curious if you give any credence to, I've read a little bit of thoughts that maybe the fool is sometimes associated with the Greek god Hermes,
Uh-huh.
and that how Hermes traditionally has like a little bag that Hermes carries on his travels, being the divine messenger of the gods. I'm curious if you give any stock to that as a theory, if there's anything playing in there with the bag and the Hermes element.
Um, Definitely the Hermes and the wings on the feet, which tie back into a bird. I think it's an eagle. Most people
Right.
do, but it could be a hawk. But that sort of brings in this messenger bag. This is a spirit messenger bag.
Yes.
And so that whole idea of what is it that is and that ties in with the Mary Poppins bag is that at any moment you can pull out whatever it is that spirit's bringing.
Right.
So lightness of being with the wings of Hermes, and also the wings on the eagle. On here we can kind of pull up. I don't know how close you can get to it before it fades out. It's much easier to see on a Pam A, on one of the original Pamela Coleman Smith decks, and
Yeah,
then
it's
it's
got a little
very
bit
clear.
diluted over time or a little bit lost in translation over
Yeah,
time as far as those markings that Pamela Colin Smith made. It's kind of hard to make it
yeah,
out now. Yeah.
yeah. So spirit messenger bag.
Yeah, I love that. It also makes me think of just on a basis of when we pull the fool, the way that Hermes, is a divine messenger. The fool is a divine
Hmm.
messenger for us too, as well. What
Yeah.
message is he going to pull out of his bag for us spiritually?
And that's that two-way thing of what goes into the bag, what comes out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the wonderful things about exploring symbols.
Yes, yes.
So
Chris on the chat said, so a bag of expansion. Yeah, I like that.
yeah.
That's a good word
Uh-huh.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Should we talk a little bit more about that eagle before we dig into some of the other
Um,
layers?
I think maybe if we need to come back to
Sure.
it, I mean, there is kind of a fun thing that was when I was playing with the eagle and the spirit messenger bag and lightness. I started thinking, well, what if what's in the bag is a parachute? And
Oh,
therefore, when
yeah,
the fool steps off the cliff, either intentionally or unintentionally,
right.
foolishly, he's got his parachute with him. So it's one of the mysteries that's been solved as to why he doesn't die falling off and falling down. Other people just see him walking off the cliff and into space,
Right,
not
right.
falling at all. So, yeah, all of these have possibilities to play with that may or may not work at the time.
Yeah.
But parachute's another thing we could unpack in terms of, um, what's the parachute that we carry in our own lives. And that brings us to metaphor, because the word metaphor is based on Greek words that basically mean a transfer device.
Okay.
And and if you go to the airport in Greece, which I haven't done, but I've heard about, the cart that you can put your luggage on to carry around, you know,
Uh-huh.
is called a metaphor.
Oh,
It's a
really?
transport device.
Oh, that's so interesting. I've never
Yes,
heard that.
and
It's
it can
fascinating.
also it can be a word that in compound words apply to any transport device. So it's used
Okay.
a lot with other words in Greek
Right.
to designate that, and we use it as taking meaning from one place to another. So that's
Yes,
what a symbol
yes,
does.
yes.
Is the symbol gives us the idea of the parachute, and then what's the parachute that I'm carrying in my own life?
Right,
That's that transport, where
right.
we transport from a general symbol to how does it apply to us?
Yes, yes.
And
Where do we get our personal
yeah,
symbology? Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the bag itself is a transport device. It is a metaphor and represents all the other symbolic metaphors that are in the entire deck and in
Right.
symbology and mythology and all the different ideas. So I did want to kind of start with that one because it blew me away.
Yeah, that really blows me away too. And I love thinking of this little bag holding all the secrets, all of the tricks, all of the symbology
Yeah.
of the tarot in one little tiny bag. That
Yeah.
I don't know. That just makes me that gives me shivers almost because that's such a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the things that it can contain, I got really inspired. I looked at online at YouTube, and it turns out that thousands of years ago, across cultures, there tend to be symbols of some godlike, god or goddess like figure carrying a handbag. And when I
Really?
started seeing these, and of course the conspiracy theorists and the people who want to make something out of nothing are going, ooh, look, they're all carrying handbags. It turns out with very high probability that some of them it's actually a water bucket, but
Okay.
it's, because it's the handbag is the bag with the handle on top, and
Right.
they're holding the handle at the top. And so in Mesopotamia, it was probably a water bucket that was used in ceremony to water the sacred seeds, but it could also be the handbag could carry the seeds
Oh my
if
gosh.
it's a cloth
Yes.
one,
Yeah.
or medicine, or
Yeah.
any of the implements, as we'll see in a little bit, that's used in the ritual.
Yeah.
So, and we can keep going with that, what it meant to all of those different possible ritual or God and human things that are being carried along with it.
Yes.
So that makes it this very mythic thing that culture after culture in South America, in Mesopotamia, in China, around the world have these figures carrying these
Right.
bags. Obviously, very important figures.
I love when you said the
So,
seeds were in there too, that even the seeds were carried in the bag because again, that with the full being like the seed of potential for all
well,
things. I just, that even that seed being a symbol within the bag, I love that.
Um, let me mention a couple more, and then I want to come back to
Please.
that. So remind me of it. So
Sure.
one of the things is memories. Does it carry? Is this the soul between lives? Up in the spirit realm, about to
Mhm.
step off into manifestation, into the realm, the world of the emperor, because the emperor is sitting right in front of the cliffs. So that's where
Okay,
the
yes.
fool would fall into.
Right.
So does he carry all of his previous life's memories or all the knowledge that he has accumulated there that he may not be aware of, because we forget, we fall into the material world to be born as a baby. And people say that newborn babies in the first couple of maybe 2 or 3 months seem to know things that
Hmm.
you can see in their eyes. It's like they're remembering, like they're going, what is this place? Where is it? How do I relate to it? And so, but they very quickly forget. So there we've got, all that knowledge. So it can be all kinds of hidden knowledge, secret knowledge, spiritual knowledge, the past lives, and the potential and the possible destiny for the next life. It can be a womb, if you
Ooh,
look at
okay. This
this.
one. Okay.
And
Okay.
so, we've got a whole
Yeah.
potential and possibility of the
Hmm.
womb. I'm not going to get into that. It could be empty,
It could be,
contain
yeah.
emptiness, just like we've got the zero up at the top,
Right.
completely empty and waiting to be filled. It can, let's see. When you talk about the Marseille deck, people related the idea of the zero, the nothingness, and the bag that is carried in the Marseille deck with a bellows. So to create air, that there's this association with air.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that goes into some of the older
Mhm.
thoughts about it. Checking my list. Burdens. We're
Mm.
carrying our baggage with us.
Or emotional baggage, yeah.
Yes.
Or any baggage,
And
yes.
that goes
Hmm.
back to the metaphor and the baggage carrier, because so much of metaphor is looking at the baggage we carry in our lives
Right,
and
right.
transports us to a possibility of being able to delve into it and look into it. So I wanted to go back to something. Oh, let me. There's a whole bunch of fun stuff that we can do. So if this is Mary Poppins' bag,
Hmm.
then we have the possibility of, as the fool let's do his journey through there, And I think everybody should kind of have the opportunity to think for themselves about this, although we can't really pause long. But, what is it that the fool would bring and to the magician that kind of activates or makes the magician function? So if it's like a medicine bag that's used in ritual, what is it that it's creating in this magician and has brought to the magician to make the magician activated, come alive, become part of the spirit thing?
Right.
So
Right.
what's your first thought?
My
What
first
is
thought is does he give the magician all of his robes and his Ouroboros belt and his divine clothing to allow
yeah,
him to step into that role and embody that role?
exactly. It could be those. And if you think kind of what's the very first thing or whatever it is, each person will have their own answer.
Hmm.
My first thought when I looked at it was, and because I've been looking at these roles from thousands of years
Right.
ago, is that the fool has the seeds for the garden in his bag.
Yes. Mhm. I
But
love
also,
that.
of course,
Mhm.
the wand, the cup, the sword, the pentacle, those are very obvious, and people often associate that the fool's carrying those implements, and go on into the clothing, and of course the snake, and we may come back around to that one. So that's and then if we're continuing on this journey,
Hmm.
he then enters the temple of the high priestess. So, what does he have in his bag for the high priestess?
Oh, wow. I love this. Oh, goodness. I feel like, oh gosh, what does he have in the bag? Does he bring possibly the scroll to her? Does he
That was my
maybe
thought.
gifts for that? Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
book bag. He's
A
carrying a
book bag.
book
Yes.
bag.
Just it's like it's right. It's his college book bag. He's got the scroll. He just hands it
Yeah.
off.
Some people might see the moon or her
Mhm.
headdress or the cross at her heart. All of those are possibilities. And of course, that reflects back on the baggage that we carry
Right.
individually.
Right.
So if we continue on,
I love
then
this
the
game.
Empress. What is it that he carries for the Empress?
I mean, does he literally bring her the potential of a womb? Does he literally go? It makes
Yeah,
me instantly go back to that womb idea you
I
had.
I know that, yeah, the womb idea is definitely a possibility. There's the heart shield, and there's also the waterfall, which I associated with that Mesopotamian water bucket,
Oh,
because
yes.
even though it starts in the high priestess, it actually becomes a fertilizing agent in the empress.
Right.
And so it makes all of that, the life of it. And then remember, he's going to jump into the world of the emperor. And we see the cliff behind the emperor. So, what might be in the bag for the emperor?
I feel like he's gonna give him that ankh as a sacred tool in his scepter, but I'm not
Yeah,
sure. I don't know.
that was my idea, that both the
Yeah,
scepter and the orb, or one or the other, that you might carry. So, and now the
the
Hierophant.
keys. He brings him the keys.
Yes.
He's got to bring him the keys.
Yeah, we can't carry our keys in our purse,
Right.
the
Yeah, a
keys to
purse,
the
and it's a little bit
kingdom,
like a little
and
handbag purse. Yeah.
yep.
I love how the fool's a
Now,
little bit like the mom that has the bag with everything in it that you would ever need, a band-aid, a snack,
exactly. And for each one, the stories you could tell of the fool going through each of these and kind of dropping along the
right,
way all of these different things
right.
that, activate, or however you want to see it. The
The
lovers. What's
seeds
in
for
the
both
fool?
trees, the tree of life
Ah,
seeds.
now I
What do you
saw it,
think?
the lunchbox. So you've got the apple or the fig in some of
Yes,
them. And then I
yes,
thought, but what about the serpent? Could he carry a snake in his bag? What about the worm in the apple?
yes, yes. I love that. Yes.
I had plenty of time beforehand to think about these.
I know, but I
So,
love this game so much, Mary. This is so fun.
yeah. And you can really see that, even unknowing, that it's almost like the fool would reach into the bag and go, oh, what's this? Oh, an apple with a worm in it. What are we going to do with this? So
It's
I didn't
almost
go
like the
much.
fool is creating the archetypes as he goes because he's giving them a starting point in each one. By almost
Yeah,
like you said, by reaching in, not knowing exactly what he's going to pull out, and then that
yeah.
becomes a basis or a foundation for part of that energy archetypally. I'm blown
I
away right now.
know.
This is so fun.
I know. And this
The
one, what does
the
he?
mallet, the
The mel.
mallet, I
Oh,
think. Yes,
oh,
that's a tool.
okay.
You know, because then it's a
Yes.
little
Yes,
toolkit.
another
Then it becomes
tool.
a little bit of a bag of
Uh-huh.
tools, like
Oh
action
yeah.
tools. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yes. The one that I kind of got hooked on, and it gave me a different insight into the chariot, which I thought of at times, but not really pulled together. And that's the shield on the front of the chariot. It's like the policeman's shield
Yes.
that he carries in his that the policeman might carry in his pocket or a little bag or something in order to show when he shows up at your door.
Kind of show his
Anyway,
credentials. He's got his credentials in
yeah,
his bag.
yeah. So that little shield that, oh, I can't, there, wait, can I
Yeah.
point to it?
With the
Yeah,
winged sun and the, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, and the wings would go back to, you could make something out of the eagle with those wings and so on. So I want to go to, let's do strength, which I hadn't done before we get to the hermit, which is going to be a big one.
I feel like
So what
I
would
feel like he
he?
brings her the floral wreath to crown her with.
Oh, and of course, that goes back, both the wreath and the lemniscate figure eight, it goes back to the magician card. And so both of those, because of the flowers that were picked in the garden.
Yes.
So it's like he's
Yes.
brought it at this next stage. Oh, I really love it, the wreath. That makes so much sense.
And I love that the wreath might have been like grown from the flowers, grown from the seeds from the magician that he brought to the magician, then picked and then
Yeah.
made into a wreath. I love it. I love it so much.
So we're not going to go through all the cards, but I did
Sure.
want to get to, let me pull this card out, the the
I
hermit.
mean, I want to go with I want to go with the lantern.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that because again that's such a key thing for the hermit to have that source of illumination. But then of course the hermit doesn't really need that. He's got his own illumination internally almost. But I almost like he
Yeah.
took the white sun. I feel like the power of that white
Ah.
sun and put it into the
Oh.
lantern and then gave it to the hermit.
Oh, that's great. I hadn't associated that with the star on it and the sun. Definitely, I thought of the lantern as being there. And what we start seeing is another layer of the cards because, of course, the fool is carrying the bag on his hiking stick.
Right.
And now the hermit is using the hiking stick, so that's not what was in the bag. But of course, the lantern becomes the most obvious thing in here. But now we also have another dimension because we've got the fool, which is innocence, starting out, youth, and we've got age and wisdom and the senex and Jungian psychology, the wise old man or woman, the teacher, the teacher through experience rather than through books or traditional teachings. We've
Right.
got the naivete of the fool and the experience of the hermit. And it's before we go into the 10, before we take another level of looking at the cards. So at this point, it's like we've kind of come to, I think, a major point before the turning point of the core things that are in the bag.
Right.
Although we could continue going and for the fun of it to do that, but we won't do it right now.
I also love
Um,
the thought
yeah.
that the fool to get to the hermit and bring him a gift or bring him something from his bag had to obviously, because the hermit's on those icy, we're assuming high mountaintops. He had to
Mm.
seek out, he had to be a seeker, a true seeker. And it's kind of that whole, when the
Ah,
student is ready, the teacher will appear, kind of like he had to go seek him out because the hermit's not necessarily just hanging out in public spaces ready to share wisdom. He has to go and go to the top and go find the hermit.
yeah.
I love
And
that.
I think this might be the first time that the fool and the other card are facing fully or moving. Yep, moving in that direction. And
So
so
that's the first
there
time
is a
between the
sense.
fool and the hermit where they're facing that, looking that
Yeah,
way between the fool and the hermit.
they're
Interesting.
both traveling the same direction. So there is that sense
Right.
of all those years in between as it's gone through those other cards to get to this wisdom place.
Right.
Um, so the bag was the hidden potential. The hermit is now able to share it and show it. Not just carry it along in the image, but to actually activate it, just like lighting that star
Right.
in it.
Right.
So it's really is now being shared as it's um, the light from the sun is now, or the celestial bodies, let's generalize it, is now being able to be used to really examine with wisdom what comes after.
Right.
So there's a sense of potential in the fool and purpose in the hermit. So the hermit is now fully aware and acting with the purpose that from all the experiences accumulated in between of that journey.
Yes.
Because the fool, one of the main meanings for the fool is it's beginning, but also beginning a journey, beginning an adventure, beginning, a new stage, beginning life. The soul just before
Right.
incarnation. So the next stage is being a little baby, and now he's grown up. So there's this whole journey motif that really solidifies the importance of the bag that
Right.
he's carrying and carrying it lightly. So,
I
what
love
other
this so
thoughts come
much.
up for you?
The only thing that it's just funny to me because I feel like I had the reverse idea, but I like your version better. I was picturing
Oh,
almost the full going through the journey, meeting all the archetypes, and them giving him something that he
why
puts in his
not?
bag. But now I'm almost like, well, could it be both? Because there's that loop. And so maybe
Yeah,
this time around he's giving some of what he's acquired, wisdom, knowledge,
yeah,
spiritual lessons. And then the next time around maybe he's learning and getting. So it's that reciprocity, where it's
yes.
reciprocal between all the archetypes and the
Mm-hmm.
energies. Yeah, it's just, this is like fascinating. My brain is buzzing right now. I got
And
feel tingling.
it comes up with the next thing, which is not quite as specific to the bag, although we can make those associations. But to kind of step away from the fool for a second,
Hmm.
we've got the whole numerological thing, which I love playing with. So we've got 13 and 4. 1 plus 3 um, equals 4, which means that death reduces down to the emperor.
Right,
And I'd like you to notice that here on the ground, the only figure that is actually shown as dead or probably dead is the emperor, the king.
right,
The others are scared, they're frightening, they're frightened, they're trying to look away from death, they're beseeching death, but it's the king who's being trampled. So here I can put it this way, and you can kind of see a little more that here he's about to be
right,
trampled.
right,
And even though he's wearing different clothes, he's not going to wear the same thing his whole life. So blue and white. So this connection between the death and the emperor is very rich. And what's the main thing that all emperors really fear? And that's that their death. So they want to pass it on to their child, usually a son, the son of the sun, in order to continue that or to build bridges and buildings that have their name, the emperor's name on it. Do
mm,
all these things to kind of perpetuate and escape that death thing. But what's really interesting, and not everybody agrees with doing this, but I think it's very powerful, is that the fool, although zero and unnumbered, is the 22nd card.
right,
2 plus 2 is
right.
4.
Uh-huh.
And so for me, this combination of life cards, if you add your month and day and year of birth, then the cards that you get, you're going to be one of these if you count the fool as the 22nd
Right,
card.
right,
And so we talked already about the fool jumping off into the world of the emperor. So coming into manifestation and the solid form world of the emperor and establishment, and wanting to hold on to both power and life forever and ever.
Yeah.
And but then eventually death comes and takes the life of the emperor. And so what happens with the fool? The soul is released back into the spiritual realm.
And then
And
back kind of to start that fresh path of a new life and possibly a new beginning,
yes,
literally like as like a reincarnated kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you have stories like the Emperor's New Clothes,
Uh-huh.
where this emperor who thinks that he's wearing some beautiful expensive clothing, it turns out that the small child is the only one who says, "Look, mom, he's wearing no clothes." And so we've got Nasruddin stories from the East, from the Middle East. We've got all kinds of King Lear stories, the Emperor and the Fool, who are switching themselves, and a lot of it has to do with wanting to make yourself in charge of it all,
Uh-huh.
and then what comes. But it does come from a spiritual perspective into the entering back into that spirit world and rebirth. Or if you don't want to take it literally in terms of rebirth, back into cosmic soul stuff. We're all made up of the elements from the Big Bang,
Right.
and so we return to those elements. Um, and so we don't totally disappear, or the manifestation of what we're made up
Right.
doesn't fully do that, but that full. So that bag of potential to me is continues to develop throughout the cards, in terms of what happens with that potential.
Right. It also occurred to me, I'm just we think
Yes.
talking about the reincarnation, the past lives, kind of going through these cycles, and continuing to rebirth and reincarnate. It makes me think of the bag almost being like when people talk about the Akashic records, where like the Hall of Records,
Oh,
where almost like possibly that bag holds that the fool's every past life, every future life, kind of like you were touching on earlier, but it's almost like revisiting the Akashic records, but he can only reach in and maybe grab one bit at a time. He's not going to be privy to every bit of his personal story because he's maybe it's not all meant to be revealed yet. Some of it needs to
yeah,
be at the bottom of the bag, hidden still.
yeah. And there's many people, if you look at the Marseille decks, in early decks, the Fool occasionally appeared as the next to last card or the very last card. So if it's the last, it also, if you put the cards in the circle, becomes the first card as you continue in the circle.
Right,
So each time at a different level of the spiral of incarnations and rebirth and remembering, to remember something,
right,
to bring back that significance. So yeah, this just this combination to me is very, very powerful, taking it on to another level.
yeah,
So let's see.
yeah,
It's the alchemy of transformation. I was playing with alchemical associations there, and the eagle could be seen as the alchemical sublimation, going into from one state into another.
yeah. Isn't
Um,
the eagle the higher expression too of Scorpio? So Scorpio as a sign is as starts out as the scorpion, very earth, low to
yeah,
the earth, and then it's a
yeah,
higher expression as the eagle, which is obviously more closer to the divine. That's the higher
yeah.
version almost of self.
Yes, yes. And the eagle is the king of the bird kingdom, like the lion is of the animal.
Right.
So again, we've got the connection with that. Yeah. I know all these things all fit together. Let's see. Container of everything, wisdom, potential. Um, gosh, have we gone through we've gone through my main ones. That was
Yeah,
pretty
my
cool.
my head is spinning. um, yeah, I mean I'm sorry. I mean, I'm almost like speechless just because it's got me like my brain just buzzing. I love this
Yeah.
so much. Yeah, that's some of my notes was just a little bit some of the things you've already touched on. Um, emotional baggage, previous assets from previous lives, karmic baggage, life lessons yet to learn, hidden talents and abilities, potential possibility. Uh, And then again, all the things coming from the majors, all the potential bag of tricks and all the different things acquired and or
Yeah,
given. I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so imagine if we went through every single symbol on just this one card and unpacked it in the same way
Right.
that we've unpacked
Right.
this bag. So, and we can, I mean, you go into the dog and where the dog appears on all the other cards and, all the different levels. Because, of course, when you're doing a reading and the fool comes up, for some people, that dog is something that takes them aback because they were bitten as a child.
Oh yes, the
And,
negative
you know,
connotation. Right.
yeah, yeah. And I have had people who, were very distressed by the dog there, even though it looks like a cute little dog, they still didn't want it at their feet and, kind of barking at them. So, every single thing that the different manifestations that we were pointing out as being possibilities of what's in the bag of the wand or the staff, because it could also be the wand that the magician holds
Right.
and the two wands that are there in the final card of the world.
Hmm.
But the dog, yeah, is it a friendly dog? Is it warning him? Is it urging him on? What do you think?
I feel like he's a companion and like a loyal companion. I
Yeah.
personally have never felt like the fool really is in fear of falling or needing to fear of falling. I
Mm,
feel like the fool will be either possibly divinely protected because, and
yeah.
maybe he's wise enough for through all his journeys to know the divine is on his side. He's spiritually protected, that he's not really in true danger.
Yeah.
So I've never really felt like the dog, whoopsie, was a warning
Yeah.
so much. That's just my personal take of the. I've
Yeah.
always just thought it was a sweet little his little companion. And then the
Uh-huh.
whiteness, the white dog, the color of the dog, obviously pointing to kind of that purity, that innocence. Just like the white sun and the as far as color. And,
Yeah.
and kind of reinforcing his own kind of purity and innocence. Because you think about children who grew up with dogs. I grew up very much with dogs. They kind of running around in the
Uh,
backyard and the dog's running around with you and they're kind of your buddy and there's a sweetness there. What about
mhm.
you? Do you ever see the dog from like a different standpoint then, or a different light?
Well, when I look at this card, of course, it's the companion there is a warning, but it's at this point not a serious one, so he's not trying to bite him or do anything really. He's not making loud noises. It's more like trying to let him be aware of where he is. But the fool, I do a lot of interactive readings with people, so I will start out asking them to describe the card. And there's so many people who, um, before they even look at the card, they go, well, do you think I'm foolish? Am I making a mistake?
Right,
And so they, and especially if you're using a Marseille deck where it looks like a street person, am I going to lose everything?
right,
Another thing for the bag.
right.
Is it going to be a lost bag?
Or an empty
um,
bag, yeah. Do you have
yeah.
nothing to work with? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, or if that's your only worldly possessions, the few things, the apple with the worm in it.
Right, the apple with the bird.
Yeah.
Somebody
So,
commented that I like the dog. This is one of the comments on the chat. I
yeah.
like the dog as ego trying to get the fool's attention. So that's interesting.
Oh,
I like
yeah.
that.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
ego self. And so many people, especially with the adorable dog. And by the way, Pamela Coleman Smith's father died, and soon after that, she met Ellen Terry, who was one of the most famous actresses of the period in England, and that's one of the reasons why she went back to England, where she had been born of American parents in England. And Ellen Terry's close companion was her little white dog that this is obviously a portrait of, because we've
Right.
got pictures of Ellen Terry holding her dog that looks exactly like this. And so we know it was a beloved figure that
Right.
was put
Right.
in there.
Now, isn't
And
there also a
yeah,
deck that shows the dog with more of a smile? I saw that on a group the other day that where it's illustrated a little bit more, like the dog is almost kind of more happy look in expression, or
it's from the original drawings that only appear in the Occult Review
okay.
and the Occult Review December 1909, which is when the very first printing of the deck was done. And I believe in that very first printing, um, you don't actually see the teeth, but you do in the black and white line drawing that appears in the Occult Review volume, that particular
Okay.
one. Um, and that was a journal of metaphysical occult ideas that in England.
Right.
So
Right.
so yeah, that was probably, very possibly the actual original work of Pamela Coleman Smith. And there may never have been painted cards per se, because one of the things you can photographically, and back then they were beginning to develop the photographic separation of colors, which
Right.
is obviously used in the coloring method that's done here.
Mhm.
But you also started out with the basic black and white image. So, and then you could often include to get those really sharp black lines, they probably worked with having the printing done with the first or last line being the black lines. So she would have had just a black and white version of the cards,
Right.
and then either one that was colored, or what they called ruby lith, where you would
Mhm.
have colors that ran through in the yellow, green, and red.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm actually have a graphic design background, and so
Ah.
I am old enough that I was learning in the early 90s, and we actually had to do some of the Ruby Lith work and cut for our
Yeah.
first projects before we actually had the programs to do design. So
Yeah.
I actually have worked with Ruby Lith. That's really, yeah, that's
Uh-huh.
it's an old
Yeah.
one, but it's yeah, that's fascinating.
And I did it in the early 70s, both in England and in the United States, working in graphic
Did you?
design.
I
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, I
Uh-huh.
love that, Mary. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Palantype organization in London. And then I came back and I was working in the print shop at a university while I got my master's.
right.
Yeah.
I love that. I did not know that about you. I
Yeah.
love that. Makes me even
Yeah.
more excited to
Yeah.
to have that.
Connection.
Yeah,
Another connection.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So, but that was getting off. But I love all these little
Me
details that
too.
we
Me
can pick
too.
up about the card.
Yeah.
So yeah, the smiling teeth on the dog, because it doesn't look like he's about to bite. He looks like he's really grinning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and then it becomes a little more friendly, and I
Yeah.
do understand why people think it might be a warning, but I just have always felt like he's either frolicking with him, because dogs, when
Mm-hmm.
you kind of dance about like that, like the bull is doing, the dogs usually want to
Yeah.
be like, "What are you doing? Are we playing? What are we doing?" Or possibly he's not understanding that he might not be in danger, but it's definitely not,
Yeah.
it's not malicious, and it's not like he's going to bite him. It's more just like, he's being a little protective of his owner, possibly. But
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's a sweet little dog. Whenever on my cards, and I'm sure you're aware of my cards, but because I always just break
Oh
out
yes.
into just symbols, and my dog is just kind of sitting there with no real expression. But what I like, because it's how I help like read more easily, intuitively, is having
Yeah.
just the blank slate of just being able to go to a symbol and not really take in the scene. Not that there's not value in the scene. There obviously is great value in the scene, but being my little dog, you're not going to read so much about it because he's not jumping, he's not leaping, and there's no potential.
Yeah.
He's not nipping at anybody's heels. So then it's just, what does the dog inherently mean for you? And like you said, some people's personal symbology, if they have bad experiences, that's going to go into that symbol for them as a dog,
Yeah.
for dogs.
And it's interesting that your bag, which you call a satchel, on your card, hold that up again,
Yeah, it's kind of
because
real
it's
simple.
got the handles very clearly, which is what is the outstanding thing on these, several thousand-year-old sculptures of godlike figures that are all carrying handbags. If you look up, archaeology handbags on YouTube, you
Uh-huh.
should find there's probably a dozen or more ones, and there's at least one or two very practical archaeologists going, okay, folks, this is not some great mystery. These are all sensible things, and there even is some written text that they have that talk about it, like the water carriers, not a handbag like this bag, not a soft-sided handbag.
Right, more like a
So
bucket, kind of like
yeah,
a, yeah.
and
Yeah.
they go then into what are, because it's obvious that then they were useful in some way in rituals.
Right.
that involve these beings, and so that's where those different ideas of the medicine. I mean, we could really go into that. If you do shamanic work, what is the medicine? How are the plants, the seeds that are in the bag? Um,
I
yeah,
can't wait to go down a rabbit hole of that on my own time, just to look up specifically some of the imagery you're talking about with the ancient water
yeah,
bucket bags and stuff. I can't wait to dig into that more.
yeah.
That's
If you can't
fascinating.
find it, let me know,
Okay.
and I'll make sure that I can. Once you get the basic keywords, you can find all of them. Yeah.
Is the conspiracies part, is that because people think it looks like like a modern handbag, so they think it's an indication of time travel or them having modern inventions
Everything you
or
can think of.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting that, and they try to make it. The biggest thing that they try to do is these must be the same people in all these different parts of the world
Oh,
where this
yes.
image occurs. Because why not? If you've got these godlike figures carrying a handbag, they all have to be from the same off world source. Again,
Right.
traveling and the eagle, they come from the air, from the spirit world into manifestation. And, why not? There we have another proof of it.
Right, right, right. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I do like it when, straightforward scientists and archaeologists and so on come back and say, okay, let's get real. And here we've got this text and it says this. So we know that.
Right.
Yeah,
Just curiously, and
yeah.
not that I think this probably matters on any level compared to how deep we've already gone,
Mhm.
but what do you think the bag is made of, material
Ah,
wise? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I always assumed it was kind of like a rough cotton or a hemp or leather,
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah,
soft leather
yeah.
bag.
I just, do you think
Yeah.
there's anything else to glean from that as far as kind of the adding to
Hmm.
the meaning of what the bag would be made of? I mean, I don't know where I'm going with it even. I'm just kind of spitballing, but I love to think about the as another layer, but
It's making me very sad for the little dog if you think about leather. I'm sorry, that was
that's
terrible.
okay. That's okay.
No.
That's funny.
Um, Yeah. If I think about medicine bag, well, that they sometimes are leather and there's sometimes, a rough cotton or hemp that you think of.
Right, right, right,
If
right.
you've
Or
ever
bison
tried to get,
skin or something like that. Or
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, we'll have to try that out and see if there's any other associations with
Right,
it.
right.
And what does it have to do with that white rose? What's your thought on
Yes.
that?
Um, well, of course, obviously the white, just the purity of the white too. But since there's so many red roses in the and we find in the tarot, because I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's any other cards that specifically show a white rose. If
The
unless
death
I'm not
card,
thinking of it. What's
the
that?
death card.
Oh yes, well, the Tudor rose. Yeah, the Tudor rose on the
Yeah,
flag. Yes, I guess I
yeah,
forget sometimes to think about that as a white rose, which may
yeah.
be the link right there. But I think it's fascinating
And
because his rose is white, but almost all the other roses we see, which are in plenitude in the tarot, are usually the red, the deep red.
yeah,
So it
they
makes me
are.
think of what is that some of the same, is it from his rose? Is it that, and they've turned colors because of some of the, the experiences have, made them turn colors and have that red vibrancy now because there's not, some of the innocence is lost. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
It can also be the combination of the white lilies that appear in several places and the red rose.
Right.
So bringing that together into the one symbol with the white rose. And especially because if he's in the realm of spirit, they haven't separated or manifested necessarily into the red and the white as they do
Right.
in the magician's garden. Because again, that's the white lily of purity, as you had mentioned, purity, and the red rose of desire.
And they're
So,
almost
and many
always
other
found
meanings.
together, right? They're, I mean, almost every instance I can think of, there's always the red rose and the white lily together in groupings on
Um,
most of the cards, I think.
Most, yeah. And
Yeah.
a lot of them, enough that it's very obvious that the point is being
Yeah.
made. Yeah.
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 I never
So
thought
it's,
about his being kind of maybe a mix of the two, but that's actually a wonderful way to think of it
yeah.
now. That brings a lot of power to it.
Yeah. It's kind of like before duality.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
duality doesn't appear until the magician with the garden where it's the red and the white, yeah, the lily and the
Right,
rose. So even though it's numbered one, there's still being brought into the physical world in the planting
right,
of the garden. But here it's connected in this card mostly with the perhaps the white undergarment, but also the sun and
yes,
the white peaks of the mountains, which we see other places.
like the
So there
hermit.
is that,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and so that white peak and the sun, there's a sense of absolute there before,
right.
if we look at Buddhist point of view, before desire comes in.
Right, right, and then you have the Buddhist kind of wheels on his garment too, or what they can be
Hmm.
interpreted as the eight spoked, Dharma
Yeah,
wheel.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and go back to the Wheel of Fortune.
Hmm.
And then there's
Hmm.
the red feather in his ivy or whatever, headpiece
Oh.
wrap. So, what about the red feather? What's that for you?
Well, it's funny because I just did with Chris Honoreo, if you're familiar with him, we just
Yeah.
did a symbol chat on just the red feathers found in
Ah,
tarot. And we
uh
talked
huh.
a lot about, it was fun because we got a whole thing about, well, what does it indicate? What does it mean? What is, is it some of that vibrancy of life? Is it that passion? Is it, but then we also got into some wormholes about like, well, what kind of bird does it come from? Is it a bird at all? And
Mm.
it was something I hadn't thought of until our chat, but I like the idea of it being a phoenix feather because again, the
Ah.
way the fool is constantly rebirthing and recoming, starting his path after he goes through all that journey and that loop, the rebirth over and over again.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what if that red feather is from a phoenix? Just add a little wrinkle of, kind of mystical creatures in there.
Oh yeah.
What about
Yeah.
you? What do you think of that red feather?
Um, I hadn't even really thought about it. Of course, there's the lightness, there's the flight. It sort of is one of the other signals that maybe he'll step off the cliff and keep going. Just
Right.
like what's that movie where they just start walking on an invisible
Oh, Indiana Jones,
bridge?
maybe? Was it
Indiana Jones.
where
Yeah,
it appears before this?
yeah.
Excuse me. Got a
Hmm.
frog in my throat.
So, but
Excuse me.
that walking on air and, being the zero and associated with Aleph, which doesn't have a sound, it's just breath. It's the, you know, intake of breath, but without sound. There's that idea of air, pure air. But here it's red. So that adds another dimension to it,
Right.
too, of perhaps the desire to move forward, to come back into incarnation. Um,
Right.
is it a gift left from a previous one?
Well, and we
Um,
noticed on the death has a red feather
yeah.
too, but death's red feather is definitely looks a little crunchier, a little sadder, a little droopier.
Yeah. Hard
It's not
life.
quite as
It's a
perky.
it's a hard life. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely like you're talking about all these cycles too, that, definitely maybe he's been loaned that from death and now it's
Yeah.
fresh again. Maybe it's fresh with this new incarnation.
Yeah.
And perkier again.
Hmm. And it's in the head, so it could be a thought that's coming up there.
Right.
You know, um,
Yeah, we talked a little
there's
bit about
this.
even though chakras was never probably intended to be part of
Yeah.
the Rider-Waite Smith, because that they weren't necessarily thinking about chakras, but in the modern times, thinking about chakra energy and that connection to the divine and our crown, and as far as where you find most of the feathers in tarot, because there's the sun has the little baby has
Hmm.
a feather, and there's
Yep.
there's a couple of the knights have some feathers and some pages, and
Yeah.
there it's almost always on the head as the plumage on the
Hmm.
head, which is adornment, but it's also kind of connecting to the divine realms too when you think of the crown chakra.
And
Yeah, he's got
again,
like a very little perky, or
yeah.
maybe has a very perky one.
And so, in a sense, and we've got the sun in both cards, we've got the red feather, and we've got the idea that even though it's shown as like a teenager in the Fool card, or late teens, early 20s, that it's a little child, but he's still, if he's about to step into incarnation, he's going to step into, a being that looks like the child on the sun card.
Right.
The bright yellow background on the Fool, that is the bright energy of the sun. It's more abstracted in the Fool. And
Right,
that's
right. It
the
doesn't, it's not
thing there.
illustrated even the same. Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's at the top of the mountain, the cold peaks of abstract knowledge. So, but I think maybe the red feather is part of what is pulling him back into incarnation, maybe.
Oh yeah, and
Uh,
even directionally, it kind of leads towards the light too
yeah,
in this card. Yeah.
yeah.
No, no, I
Whereas the
read
rest of
somewhere.
it is
Right.
abstract. Yeah.
Right, right. I read somewhere that scientifically, the true color of the sun is white. We don't perceive it that
Ah.
way though because of various, I don't remember all the science, but I remember we just don't perceive it
Mm.
with our vision. And
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
illustrations in art, usually it's yellows, because we get kind of
Hmm.
the sense of the warmness of the light. But if you think about the true color being white, it just kind of nods back to the fool being pure, innocent. He's not tainted by anything
Yeah.
illusion even yet. He's very much just wide open, eyes wide open, understand. And he's very up high to where he can see the truth, almost like the eagle-eyed. The eagle can has that perspective from up high, to really
Yeah.
see things as they are. The fool, I just love the fool in general because I feel like the fool really is is hiding as a fool when he's really one of the wisest in the deck. I just feel like his
Ah.
energy usually carries a lot of wisdom, more than maybe he's given credit for sometimes.
And it's almost as if he's got all of that wisdom, but as he steps off, he doesn't know it in that, human terms anymore. And yet he still carries it completely with him, which as a soul being, I could imagine his knowing.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And I do think that it's interesting with the flag on the sun card, because when I was talking about the parachute, I'm looking at it. Oh, it's unfurled.
Oh, it's like the
It,
parachute. Yes.
so there it is, and it's attached to the wand, the
Yes,
walking stick, the wand.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I love this. Oh my gosh, this
I
is
know.
Mary, I could talk to you for hours because just the way you play with symbols too is just the way my brain makes my brain light up. I
Yeah.
love it so much.
Yeah. And of course, when we're doing readings, we unpack what the symbols mean or triggering in the actual individual. And just like saying that for some people, the dog can be, frightening, I wish he'd shut up. I wish, whatever it is, I don't say, no, no, he's a friendly dog. And I'm sure you don't either. It's
Right.
like, oh, okay. So that what happens if he's doing that? Because then we're helping them unpack their own baggage and why the fool's there. And I think part of our role as a teacher, but not as an absolute, more of a guide, I call myself a midwife, is to help the person, um, who give birth to their own wisdom of, okay, you have this long history with the dog being, annoying or frightening or whatever it is. And is there some way in which we can see it in a way that will take you to the next level, that will allow you to let go of some of those earlier processes or see a potential you couldn't see before?
Right. That's
And
so beautiful. I love that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, not insisting on it, but presenting it as a potential, a possibility.
Yes. Yes. And
Yeah.
that's the
So I
beauty of
think,
symbolism too, is how fluid it is because it's
yeah,
fluid and it's a ever changing language, it's fluid and it's different for every single person.
yeah. And what you're doing of going through the possibilities of the symbols with other people and talking, here about that, then, you're exploring all these different potentials and reminding yourself, opening other people to its, because there's so many readers. And I don't mean this to be a put down, because it depends on the style of reading you're doing. If you're a very fortune telling, predictive reader, which is valuable in its own right, the best of them are the best. But for those who are learning or, kind of stuck themselves, um, they're fixated on one story about it. And
Right,
it has to
right.
be that.
One narrative, yeah. One narrative, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And, we lose so much because then, the client might be struggling, but I'm not that. How could I don't know how to get there. I don't know what to do. I just can't see it that way. That's not going to help them if we're saying, no, you have to see it this way.
Right,
Or
right.
yeah,
And I love that. And I think that's the beauty of tarot, because how boring would tarot be if there was really only one right answer for every symbol, for every card? And, I
yeah,
think anybody who truly kind of values the layers of it understands that tarot is a fluid language, just like symbolism is a fluid language. It's
yeah,
just, I don't know. I love that. I love that. That's why we're still talking about tarot, hundreds of years later, because it holds that fascination, because it's like there's still layers to be uncovered for everybody,
yeah.
you know?
And to me, that's the difference in the tarot and Lenormand, because I'm a very traditionalist reader of Lenormand, where I see in the traditional light, there are a couple of meanings for each card, and that's all they are. And if you start looking at it the way we've been taking apart, the symbolism and all the possibilities,
Right.
then you're not reading Lenormand anymore. You're using it as an oracle deck, which is perfectly fine to do, but
Sure.
you're not reading
Right.
Lenormand. And so, if I want some kind of very solid answer or prediction, or my daughter recently couldn't find some jewelry. And so, one of the things I do is because there's a pretty set meanings for lost objects in Lenormand that's based on their very traditional meanings.
Right.
And so, I sat down and drew 5 cards and said, da, 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 da. This is what Lenormand says. She goes home because she was visiting me. She goes home, goes directly to the place that I was describing, and there was the jewelry that
Right.
she had totally
I've I
forgotten.
I don't really even practice Lenormand that much. I've learned little
Yeah,
bits, but I've always heard it's more like it's going to tell you just exactly what it's meant, what you need to know, very direct.
yeah,
Whereas tarot is, again, it's a lot more interpretive, it's a lot more individual, it's a
yeah,
lot more fluid. It's really interesting, the difference between the two.
yeah. So if, at the end of this deep soul searching reading that I'm doing with somebody, if they look at me and say, that was incredible, that was fascinating, but will he come back to me? I will pull out my Lenormand and say, okay, you're going to get a straight answer.
Right.
And I'll pull a few cards and answer yes or no.
Yeah. And that's a
you
better
know,
deck to do
um,
it
yeah. And, close out, you wanted to know, baby. So there it is. And,
with. Right.
all this stuff about what you can do with your life if you just let go of it. You know, take it or leave it. That's your business.
Right. That's
So,
fun. That's
because I
funny.
don't want to read the tarot in that the way of the Lenormand, so it gave me an opportunity to be able to look at things from that perspective without my saying, "Oh, the bag is specifically this, and the dog is doing exactly that," and he's going to take a leap, or he doesn't ever take a leap because he's happy where he is. I've heard people say all of these things as the absolute of this
Right.
card,
Right.
and that closes it off.
It does. It really closes it off. And how is that going to be the same reading for everybody who gets the Fool? I mean, it's just, that's not
Yeah,
giving due where credit's due. The Fool's got lots of bag of tricks and lots of bag of
yeah,
messages for us.
yeah. Well, I find that if you're very clear about your meaning and messages and techniques with the tarot will follow it. So you can have a set meaning for this card. And if you're really consistent with that and you really see that, the tarot will give you messages according to that. At least I've seen it do that. But it's kind of like that's the end of the thing. No, he's not coming back. End of talk. End of message. you know, you've got it. It's in the closet on the top shelf. Oh, okay. Nowhere else, but thank you. I'll go back and I'll get my jewelry off. You know, uh, yeah. Everything that I told her was exact. Yeah,
Right,
and
right.
I've done it for myself and for other people too. It's pretty amazing. But you
Yeah.
have to use with Lenormand. You use those set things. With tarot, it's really hard to um, do. Where is something? Where is this
It's
object that
probably
I
in the
can't
Fool's
find?
bag. If it's lost, it's in the Fool's
Exactly.
bag.
But where is the fool's bag? That becomes then the question. Oh, I left it somewhere. Yeah.
Well, this has
That's
been so
yeah,
fabulous. And I literally took notes on some of the
yeah,
things you said because I need to go dig into some of this myself. This was just amazing.
yeah.
Thank you so much
Oh,
again
yeah,
for doing this with me. I'm very honored and very excited that you were willing to chat with me because
yeah.
you're amazing and I'm so appreciative. So thank you.
Can I say one last
Please,
thing?
yes, please.
Please come to Omega, the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. July 18th to 20th is the Masters of Tarot conference with Ethany Dawn, Mark Horn, and Sasha Graham and
Oh,
me.
I hadn't
And
heard the
then,
lineup this year yet. I
yes,
knew that's wonderful. Yeah.
and then we do the Wisdom of Tarot, which is with Carolyn Cushing and me, which is totally exploratory. We start out with some basics, and then we just start exploring and creating and making up. All these, a lot of the stuff that Rachel Pollack and I wrote about in our books of techniques and methods and things were things we created on the spot in that Wisdom of
Right.
Tarot class. And so we're continuing to do that.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to
Yeah.
make it there
That's
someday. Maybe I can this year. I would love to do it myself.
20th to the 25th
Yeah,
for the wisdom 5 day, much more time to get to know other
sure.
people and share readings. The weekend's very concentrated but with really focused experiential workshops.
That sounds fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you, because I was going to ask if there were other things that you wanted to share too, of just obviously you've got a million things that you offer, but besides Omega, are there any other things you'd like to share that you have out right now, coming out?
um,
I just got one of your newer books, or I know it was The Essence of Tarot, but I know it's
yeah.
kind of a redo, but I didn't have the original, so I was very excited to get it.
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah. That's the new book that's out, and I'm doing some podcasts. The big thing I was going to be doing was Reader's Studio, that's postponed till
Yeah,
next
I saw.
year.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
disappointing. Yeah,
yeah,
hopefully it'll be
yeah,
back strong next year. Yeah.
and then some possibility of some more travel that's not finalized yet. Yeah.
So, but as
So
far as appearances, that's the big one that we know of right now is Omega, and
Omega
um,
definitely.
okay, but nothing else that you can disclose yet on the books for other places people can see you in person.
Um, there's going to be a podcast tomorrow.
Okay,
It's on my Facebook
I
page
think I
that
saw that.
I
Yeah,
was in. Yeah,
yeah.
and then I don't know if this goes out anywhere else or not. If it does, send me the info
Yeah, I was
rather
gonna
than
try to share
Instagram.
it on YouTube as well, but I have to kind
Okay.
of I have to cut it up to so that we're not vertical anymore.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
takes a little bit of editing, and then
Oh,
it'll stay on my Instagram page because even though it's live, the recording will stay there too.
you could
Um,
also put a garden of roses, red and white roses, red roses and white lilies or whatever on the sides.
oh, there you go. Then I wouldn't have to even edit. Yes, that'd be beautiful. I love that.
Oh, I was just thinking, where could you get the tarot in some kind of thing
Yeah,
on, or two figures looking at each other on the two sides? Who knows?
that
They're
would be
watching us.
fabulous.
So, yeah, and then there's a couple more that will be coming up of
Okay.
interviews and things.
And I
So,
know
thank you for doing
I
this.
follow you on Facebook and all the places on
Yeah,
Instagram and stuff. Are there
yeah.
other places? Are you on any of the other socials actively, or where are the best places for people to follow you?
Uh, Facebook is actually
Facebook.
the best. I just get too frazzled when I'm having to do too many, but I am
Sure.
going to be starting to do a little more on other platforms. That is still in the early planning stages.
Okay.
So hopefully that will be coming up. And one other thing. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, that's enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure everybody here that joined or watches this after the watches the recording, surely you know who Mary Kay Greer is. If you don't, I don't know why you're on this
No.
watching this. But obviously, follow and support and just go see her in all the places. She's just I can't say enough nice things about just what a font of wisdom and knowledge you are for the tarot world.
Uh,
And again, thank you for graciously sharing your knowledge with us all because I think it helps us all grow and learn. So thank you
oh,
so much.
well, this is what I love talking about.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can do like another one in the future if you're willing, because
Oh, I'd
I
love
would
it.
love to
Yeah.
dissect another symbol with you and just hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well,
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Mary. I really appreciate it. And yes, thank you again. I just really am very, very honored. Thank you.
oh, well, thank you so much. And you've got a fabulous deck which really focuses in on the symbols, which, you
Thank
know,
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That really means a lot. Thank
Yeah.
you. And thanks to everybody that jumped in on and joined in on,
Yep.
the live. And if you're watching this after,
Little
thank you very
mini
much. And
hearts.
oh yeah, that's
Mini
right. I have
hearts.
to learn to do
Yeah.
that still. My son was teaching me that one.
They're mini hearts.
Yeah. My son's 13, so I think this is part of his generation. He's teaching me that.
Yeah. It
Wonderful.
comes from K-pop. It's a
Oh, is that
K-pop thing.
where it came from? I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I
Yeah.
didn't know. I just
Yeah.
seen people doing it around more and
Oh yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh,
Definitely.
wonderful. Well, thank you again, and wishing you all the best, and hope to connect again soon. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.